Hey guys, it's Jay. Welcome back to my channel, where we discuss the popular culture of the 70s, 80s, and 90s. I don't know about you, but I am fascinated with dragons. They are an interesting creature, somewhat mystical, and somewhat rooted in reality. They seem like gigantic dinosaurs, but can fly, and oftentimes can speak. I really wanted to showcase a wonderful cartoon by Rankin and Bass called The Flight of Dragons.
Flight of dragons soar in the purple light in the sky. Or in my...
The Flight of Dragons is a very interesting cartoon. It explores the idea that man is losing faith in magic and instead begins to embrace the idea of science. The Green Wizard, Carolinus, who is the master of nature, realizes that magic is beginning to fade. So he summons a meeting of his three brothers. The Blue Wizard, Solaris, who is master of the heaven and seas. The Yellow Wizard, Lo Te Zao, who is the master of the air and sky. And finally, the Wizard Omadon, who is the master of black magic and the domain of evil. The four wizards convene to discuss the current peril of magic. As the four wizards prattle about and discuss the waning powers that each of them are experiencing, Carolinus proposes that the four wizards combine their magical powers to create the last realm of magic, where all mystical creatures and magical beings can retreat to save themselves and their way of life. Carolinus' two brothers, the Blue Wizard and the Yellow Wizard, are all for this idea and applaud Carolinus' efforts. However, the Wizard Omadon is not in agreement with the rest of his brothers. As a matter of fact, Omadon plans to use man's reluctance of magic to start spreading his own seeds of deceit.
By summoning all the dark powers, I will infest the spirit of man so that he uses his science and logic to destroy himself.
The other three brothers vow to stop Omadon. Antiquity, the overseer of all magical beings in this world, expressly forbids the quarreling of the four magic brothers. So they must choose a champion to begin a quest. Lo Te Zao reminds Carolinus that there must be three in order to begin a quest. So Carolinus proposes Gorbash, his dragon, young and impetuous, but strong. Carolinus then suggests Orrin Neville Smith, a great knight and champion who has come to his aid in the past. Unfortunately, Carolinus has no idea who the third champion will be. He looks to ask Antiquity for its advice. Carolinus then consults with Antiquity, who reveals to him that the champion, as a matter of fact, it is a descendant of the future, the 20th century to be exact. Carolinus is gifted with a silver acorn with which to drop into a placid pool where his answers will be revealed.
Are you certain this is the limpid pool of time?
My dear young fellow, I am one of the four magic brothers. I should know a limpid pool of time when I see one.
Carolinus is shown a vision of a young man who embraces both science and magic. His name is Peter Dickinson. Peter is a well-educated person in the 20th century. As a matter of fact, he excels at all things science. But his heart seems to long for dragons magic and mystery. So much so that he's created a board game called The Flight of Dragons. Having seen enough, Carolinus decides that he must reveal himself to Peter and transports himself into the 20th century.
A splendid game. Come down and join it.
What?
Un Tronto Kala! 12! There's no beating that. Come down, I say.
He brings himself onto the board, which Peter and his friend are playing, and shows Peter the true meaning of magic. Peter, being a man of science, has started to theorize why it is that dragons are able to fly. Being such large and immense lizard-type creatures, it really is a fascinating subject to him. So much so that when he meets his first dragon, he is completely enamored, and even ignores the fact that he's been singed by dragonfire.
A dragon? I'm riding a blooming dragon!
What'd you call me?
Ow! Turn your head.
Sorry.
I've just been singed by dragon fire! What a great way to travel!
The Flight of Dragons really is an amazing tale. It's based off of a book by Peter Dickinson, of all people, who theorized on how dragons were able to fly and exist and also disappeared off of the face of the earth. It's a wonderful book. I haven't read it personally, but from what I understand, it reads very much like a scientific textbook with illustrations and wonderful designs. Peter Dickinson himself tried to theorize how it was that dragons could fly. As a matter of fact, in the Rankin and Bass movie, they actually go through some of the theories that Dickinson had, including the fact that they have to chew precious stones, eat limestone, and the reason why dragons need to be able to breathe fire. Dickinson went so far as to explain how the fire is even expelled through their mouth. The Flight of Dragons itself is a completely different story, which was created by Rankin and Bass to give a narrative towards this wonderful tale of how dragons were able to fly. The characters involved are compelling, in so much as they're trying to save the world of magic from the world of science. It's a wonderful little juxtapositioning where the two opposing forces can literally not exist within each other. As a matter of fact, some of the resolution of that is part of where the story ends. The characters themselves, Peter Dickinson, Carolinus, the other wizards, they are wonderfully hashed out. Very, well, unfortunately, one-dimensional in certain regards, as it is a child's tale. But the quest itself is quite noble. Some of the other characters, including Orrin Neville Smith, again, is very one-dimensional. He is a knight who really only has one task, which is chivalry. The other characters themselves are, unfortunately, equally one-dimensional. But each of them has a role to play, and they all eventually find their uses, strengths, weaknesses. And it's up to Peter, as a man of science, to bring them all together and to lead them to victory. Although many of the characters are one-dimensional, the story itself is quite enchanting. It really is a tale for younger children who can still imagine the idea of fantasy realms, dragons, and worlds which no longer exist. I really did find myself becoming enchanted once again after watching the film so many years later. Although there are many holes in the plot, as well as I said before, very one-dimensional characters, the story itself is an innocent tale, and really tries to justify what it is that magic used to bring to this world. Carolinus, in the beginning of the film, tries to explain how magic inspired human beings to actually create wondrous scientific inventions.
The world, though it does not realize it, cannot do without magic. For example, man hears of the dragon's invulnerable skin, and lo, he makes armor, battleships, tanks. A fairy flies, and furiously jealous man himself defies gravity with machines he will call airplanes.
The cast of The Flight of the Dragons included some of the biggest heavy hitters of voice acting, as well as some really notable actors at the time, including Harry Morgan as Carolinus, the Green Wizard, Alexandra Stoddard as Princess Melisande, James Gregory as the dragons Smeargle and Birag, Paul Frees as the Blue Wizard Solaris, and as Antiquity, Don Messick as the Yellow Wizard Lo Te Zau. Don also voices Giles, the Elf, James Earl Jones as the Wizard Omadon, Bob McFadden as Oren Neville Smith, as Gorbash, the Dragon, Larry Storch as the Pawnbroker, Victor Bruno as Arag, the Wolf, Nellie Bellflower as Danielle, the Archer, and John Ritter as Peter Dickinson. The Flight of the Dragons is a wonderful tale, which was written to try and help explain why magic cannot exist with science. But it also helps to remind us of how enchanting the idea of magic and magical creatures really are. It's been quite some time since I've been able to watch The Flight of the Dragons, but having experienced it again, I realize as an adult that the story itself is quite linear. Some of the characters are a little one-dimensional, but the overall arcing story is wonderfully told, and the idea of magic and science existing on the same plane, it really is a wondrous tale. And I really did find myself reliving that sort of feeling that I had when I was a little kid. I really do encourage everyone to have a look at The Flight of the Dragons and experience it for yourself. It's not readily available, but I think you can still find it on Amazon or eBay. The Flight of the Dragons was another wonderful cartoon produced, written, and directed by Rankin and Bass Productions. The animation was done by the same team who worked on The Hobbit, and would go on to help form the basis of Studio Ghibli. If you'd like to experience The Flight of the Dragons yourself, I would suggest looking on Amazon or eBay for any DVDs that might still be available. Well guys, that'll about do it for my look back at The Flight of the Dragons. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave me a like. It really helps me out. If you have any comments or suggestions on anime, cartoons, toys, collectibles, or anything else you'd like me to review, please leave that in the comment section below. And consider subscribing, as I have many more episodes on the way. Also, consider sharing this episode with someone you think would enjoy it. Well guys, as always, thank you very much for watching. Check out some of the other episodes I've done. You can also follow me on Facebook and Twitter.